Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, with this whole another conservative jumping ship, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I'm actually waiting on a little wee bit of information, and I've got just a little bit more digging I've got to do. I've been finding some pretty scary stuff about who this MP really is, and maybe some of the things that he actually might be accused of doing. But without evidence, I don't really want to throw it out there. And of course, with a lot of the accusations, I don't dox people, and I only give the facts. Sorry, so sorry, just the truth, just the facts. What I am going to concentrate on today, there's a lot of CBC got caught. Now, I was on the ball. I was one of the first people to catch on to this, and they got caught. Rosemary, the liberal propagandist queen, she's such a waste of skin, got caught. Now, we're going to play that clip again, and I hope that you join to either my X or Facebook or Spotify or all of them, so that because a lot of the times I don't post them on here. I'll maybe try and post a small post in the clip, but it's really not necessarily worth putting the video up, especially with the censorship that I fight on this platform. YouTube is horrible for censoring me because, well, I don't baby talk. I try to give you, word for word, the truth. CBC, the propaganda arm, is the strongest tool used by dictatorships, socialist and communist regimes. I've studied censorship. I have studied the atrocities, especially with what's happened to my family in the past, and how literally there was a MP, Mrs. Freeland, who is a family ancestor of the person who exiled and murdered my family in Ukraine, as well as hundreds of thousands of other lives. And I have a previous episode, I urge you to watch it, where I break it all down. I show all the evidence, family lineage, I expose it. Well, now there's even a Ukrainian guy, which I'm hoping I have time in this episode to show you a clip of, who's from Ukraine. And it's so refreshing to see them finally speaking out about the truth of Ukraine and how what happened there is being done to us here. Paid protesters, propaganda, lies, fear, hate, and division to cause chaos. Now, Prime Minister Carney was asked at a presser where, by the way, Brookfield is linked to, about Rubio's remarks at his speech on Munich, which the media has been trying so desperately hard to not talk about. Because it was, and I know he's not the president, I watched it 3 times. I thought it was one of the most presidential speeches I have ever seen in my life. And it explains exactly what the American administration is doing today. I'm going to play that for you. And as always, I put all the links down in the description so you can actually watch the interview after his speech. But I want to start off with just something that the media, the un-Canadian, heartless, demoralized propaganda has been hiding from Canadians. And the worst part about it is the Liberals were using this Bill C-9 that I'm going to expose today in order to stop any parliament so that the media could say, well, it's the conservatives that aren't working with the liberals. And at no point in time did they actually bring out how anti-Canadian, anti-American Canadian, anti-European Canadian American this bill is. This bill is scary. I'm going to break down just a few clips from this presser. Listen very, very carefully to what they have to say. Unbelievable. Goodbye, freedom of speech and religion.
Bill C-9 opens the door to the criminalization of religious expression and belief. While paying lip service to religion, Bill C-9 pulls the rug out from under people of faith.
There are some in these hallowed halls who clearly do not believe in freedom of speech, especially when it applies to those ordinary Canadians who recognize and follow a higher power. The Liberal government, together with the Bloc Québécois, aim to tighten the noose on our free speech rights. With their support for Bill C-9 and its proposed amendments, our God-given constitutional right to express our beliefs freely, in good faith, a right that we have all enjoyed up till now, is in jeopardy. I was alarmed to learn the Liberal government made a deal with the Bloc Québécois to remove the religious exemption from Canada's hate speech laws in return for the Bloc's support of Bill C-9. I am also alarmed by the audacity of Liberal Minister of Culture Mark Miller, who stated that certain Bible passages, quote, are clearly hateful, and, quote, there should perhaps be discretion for prosecutors to press charges. There are clearly passages in religious texts that are clearly hateful, unquote. The Bible is not hate speech. Biblical teaching must never be criminalized. Even apart from the issue of outlawing religious speech that liberals find offensive, I oppose Bill C-9 for its unconstitutional and unjustified attempt at censorship. While I may disagree with people who express words and ideas that are hateful or derisive, I do not think they should be imprisoned. I would rather know what they are thinking, so their views may be exposed to public scrutiny and debate. I believe in our fundamental right to freedom of expression enshrined in our Constitution. It must be protected in its broadest form, up to the point of calling for actual violence, which is already illegal under our current criminal code. It is unwise and dangerous to give the police, the courts, or the government the power to censor, regulate, and control the speech of free citizens in a free country. Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister who fought a war against tyranny, said this: everyone is in favor of free speech. Hardly a day passes without its being extolled. But some people's idea of it is that they are free to say what they like. But if anyone else says anything back, that is an outrage. The Liberals and Bloc Québécois substitute the word hate speech for outrage. We ask the honourable members of Parliament and the Right Honourable Prime Minister, what is the real crime? Speaking or silencing? What is the greater evil? Free expression or imprisoning expression? The answer is obvious, and the remedy is clear. Reject Bill C-9.
We've heard how Bill C-9 lowers standards for what constitutes hate, removes key safeguards like Attorney General oversight, and opens the door to ideological groups weaponizing the law against people of faith for their beliefs. The truth is that Bill C-9 does not unify Canadians. It divides them.
Now, this is the key to what this bill actually does. And this is what bad leaders, control mongers, dictators, socialists, and communists try to achieve fear, hate, and division. Now, we know they control the propaganda. I'm going to prove it to you, as I always do. But the deep part of how this bill is written is it doesn't just attack the Bible. It attacks the Quran. It attacks every single religious text there is. It allows the government to manipulate through who they appoint, and which, I have to remind you, 10.5 years, the majority of judges and lead positions in our country, unvoted for, appointed positions, are making decisions that are completely contrary to the freedoms that we Canadians inherently have. They have removed them, squashed them, crapped on them. And it's getting harder and harder and harder for justice to be found. Case in point, today's the anniversary of the trampling of the Freedom Convoy. Now, a lot of people out there are like, oh, that Freedom Convoy, they deserved it. Again, welcome to propaganda. You have been brainwashed. It was the largest and most peaceful protest in Canadian history. Now, 2 courts have already found what the Liberal government did unconstitutional. What did your media do? Did this become a big thing? Did they start looking to start hacking the ankles and actually exposing the people who were involved that pushed this anti-Canadian agenda on peaceful people? Nope. No, they did not want Canadians to know that all of the legacy media had been lying and continue to lie about the Freedom Convoy. That whole event completely tore the fabric of Canada. And everybody goes, it's a fringe minority. No, it's not. And this is where people have to wake up. You have people who have done heinous crimes. And I expose it all the time. From hurting and abusing women, drug trafficking, gun selling, smuggling, murder, extortion, foreign interference, slap on the wrist, out in a day. These people have they have offenses that are in the 10s, 20s, 30s, and sometimes hundreds, and they're walking the streets. But our justice system, through spite, in order to try to literally tear the fabric of Canada, went after, what? Tamara Litch and Barber? For mischief? For mischief? Their sentences were longer than these people who are get caught with illegal firearms shooting up houses, or that have hurt women, trafficked. This is the agenda. This is what media is purposefully doing to Canada, and Canadians need to wake up. It's the same Liberal Party, and it's not the same Liberal Party that we used to have 15 years ago. It has been completely corrupted and taken over. Our entire system is being destroyed. And people are sitting at home watching CBC and CTV and Global and reading The Star and all the rest of these propaganda arms, believing everything they say with no proof. I put all the links below. I don't hide anything. That's why I started this channel, to try to get people to actually realize, with the evidence provided, of what's going on. Let's listen a little bit further to this, because this is, like I said, this is the crucial part. It's It's to destroy unity.
Jesus Christ, who is God with us, warns that a house divided cannot stand. Bill C-9 creates a divided Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney, Minister of Justice Sean Fraser, on behalf of over 60,000 Canadians, we call on you to withdraw Bill C-9 in its entirety. Thank you.
Now, the reason that petition was so low is because there was zero media talking about C9. Everybody thinks this C9, well, at least the people who watch CBC and CTV and all the rest of this verbal diarrhea, this propaganda, never realized what C9 really is. It's the complete tearing out of the heart of what made Canada. It's to destroy the Western ideology, our true fundamental belief system that gave us the laws that we made government pass in order to protect the freedoms of citizens. Now, Canada has always been a weak stance on that. One of the weakest within all of the democracies. And you see it today. When you have a parliamentary system that is purposely set up that works against the people, such as being able to cross the floor. And online, it's disgusting to read the divisive rhetoric that these people are jumping into without realizing it's good for one side. Oh, you said that it was good for yours. That's what they want. That's why our system was set up that way. You're sitting there squabbling over something that, when it affects you, you realize how damning and undemocratic it really is. I have never believed in floor crossings, ever, because I have seen the damage it does to the voters who put that person in that seat. You are ripping away the rights that those people had voting for that individual or that party. And then what? Now all of a sudden their vote doesn't count. This is how our system was set up. They want you to be in despair. They don't want you to vote. They want you to be too preoccupied. The Colosseum. Are you entertained? Go get the ball. It's one of the most undemocratic things our system has. Being able to literally tell all of your voters, too bad, so sad, I'm jumping ship. This has to change. This bill, again, the way it is written, allows for the extremist elements of religions to use our own system against us. That is the extreme Christians and Muslims and all the rest of them. Again, who are they bringing in? I have amazing Muslim friends. They don't like this bill. They also are 100% against so-called Muslims blocking the streets and traffic, or turning on loudspeakers and forcing everybody within a multicultural, diverse, ethnic, and religious, just melting pot to be forced to listen. You have good and bad in all religions. Our immigration system used to pick that apart and only bring in those who would assimilate. They keep the religion, but they assimilate to the ideology of what it is to be Canadian, to be peaceful, to treat everybody equally, to allow everybody the freedom to speak, to debate, to resolve. This has all been stripped from us with this new Liberal Party. And like I said, I have studied propaganda. These are the tools that the socialists, the fascists, the communists, and dictators use. A house divided will fall, and we are seeing it. This is our population growth since 2000 to 2024. This is shocking. Canada has replaced 34.6% of our population since 2020. The largest portion of that coming since 2015. It is out of control. Yes, replacement theory exists. It's been proven. But mainstream uses every which way possible to try and say, oh, anybody who says that is a racist. I'm sorry, I'm not a racist. I have got a lot of different ethnicities in my family, and I am proud of every single one of them. Moving on.
Said you're fearing of prosecutions for people who just are expressing religious views outside the consensus. I wonder if you have one single example of something that can be said which is in the religious scriptures or in the religious speech at large that it would put someone at risk.
Yes, certainly. Even with radical Islam, as you were mentioning that with George, this Bill C-9 would...
Oh, and I want to comment too on this. There was only one French reporter. French, because they have had this secular legislation in.
Actually threaten our ability to criticize radical Islam, their actions and beliefs, because it could be portrayed as vilification. If we want to criticize some of the extremist actions that we're seeing in some of these pro-Hamas demonstrations and such, this bill will make it harder to speak out because there is the threat, because we are speaking as, say, Christians or even from a secular perspective against those of another religion, and this bill threatens up to 2 years of prison time for that type of expression.
We've already seen how Carney and the whole elbows up with the use of propaganda has been forcing this brainwashing of hate America, hate Trump, hate. When the reality is, and yes, Trump says some just darn right stupid shit sometimes, and pardon my French, but he does. The fact of the matter is his policies and what he has done to the United States has just blown every economist in every other country off of their seat. And our media lies. They just constantly lie. Oh, they're doing this because they're doing this because they're doing this because price. They know down there that they have been watching in the last 10 years our country become a socialist nation. They also know that we have been brainwashed to believe this green carbon lie, which all of the other countries that have done it are falling in the exact same pool of poverty, incredible crime, loss of identity, falling schools, failing social systems like healthcare, retirement, our dollar being worth nothing, all of our industries being dismantled, turning us into a mechanical, low-pay, impoverished socialist nation. Just another fool on the assembly line. We're not even really breadwinners anymore. Oh, thank you so much for your handout. I'll go back to work another 16, 18 hours a day. This is why our populations are dropping, our birth rates are plummeting. Because how can a couple have kids when you will never be able to own a home you will never be able to have the time to raise them, or you'll never be able to work enough hours in the day to pay somebody else to raise them. But don't worry, the government, they jumped on that right away with their $10 a day daycare, which destroyed the daycares across Canada. There are more people now without daycare than there were before the plan was set out. Every single thing this government has done in the last 11 years, 10 and a half years, has been done for one particular reason: to push us in a socialist society and give power to the elite. Brookfield and Carney don't care about you. They don't care. Sit back, a cup of coffee or a beer or a glass of wine, and listen to what the American administration is saying. And listen carefully to the one country that they gave up on and don't even bring up in this speech.
Thank you very much. We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world. You know, when this conference began in 1963, it was in a nation, actually it was on a continent, that was divided against itself. The line between communism and freedom ran through the heart of Germany. The first barbed fences of the Berlin Wall had gone up just 2 years prior. And just months before that first conference, before our predecessors first met here in Munich, the Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear destruction. Even as World War II still burned fresh in the memory of Americans and Europeans alike, we found ourselves staring down the barrel of a new global catastrophe, one with the potential for a new kind of destruction, more apocalyptic and final than anything before in the history of mankind. The time of that first gathering, Soviet communism was on the march. Thousands of years of Western civilization hung in the balance. At that time, victory was far from certain. But we were driven by a common purpose. We were unified not just by what we were fighting against. We were unified by what we were fighting for. And together, Europe and America prevailed. And a continent was rebuilt. Our people prospered. In time, the East and West blocks were reunited. A civilization was once again made whole. That infamous wall that had cleaved this nation into two came down, and with it an evil empire. And the East and West became one again. But the euphoria of this triumph led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it has cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours, shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized, shipping millions of working and middle-class jobs overseas, and handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward, to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe, we belong together. America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before. The men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors as a sacred inheritance, an unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive. Because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own. National security, which this conference is largely about, is not merely a series of technical questions. How much we spend on defense or where, how we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending? Because armies do not fight for abstractions. Armies fight for a people. Armies fight for a nation. Armies fight for a way of life. And that is what we are defending. A great civilization that has every reason to be proud of its history, confident of its future, and aims to always be the master of its own economic and political destiny. It was here, in Europe, where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here, in Europe, where which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the scientific revolution. It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in Cologne, they testify not just to the greatness of our past or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await us in our future. But only if we are unapologetic in our heritage and proud of this common inheritance can we together begin the work of envisioning and shaping our economic and our political future. Deindustrialization was not inevitable. It was a conscious policy choice, a decades-long economic undertaking that stripped our nations of their wealth, of their productive capacity, and of their independence. And the loss of our supply chain sovereignty was not a function of a prosperous and healthy system of global trade. It was foolish. It was a foolish but voluntary transformation of our economy that left us dependent on others for our needs and dangerously vulnerable to crisis. Mass migration isn't some fringe concern of little consequence. It was and continues to be a crisis which is transforming and destabilizing societies all across the West. Together, we can reindustrialize our economies and rebuild our capacity to defend our people. But the work of this new alliance should not be focused just on military cooperation and reclaiming the industries of the past. It should also be focused on together advancing our mutual interests in new frontiers, unshackling our ingenuity, our creativity, and the dynamic spirit to build a new Western century. Commercial space travel and cutting-edge artificial intelligence, industrial automation and flex manufacturing, creating a Western supply chain for critical minerals not vulnerable to extortion from other powers, and a unified effort to compete for market share in the economies of the global South. Together, we can not only take back control of our own industries and supply chains, we can prosper in the areas that will define the 21st century. But we must also gain control of our national borders. Controlling who and how many people enter our countries, this is not an expression of xenophobia, it is not hate. It is a fundamental act of national sovereignty. And the failure to do so is not just an abdication of one of our most basic duties owed to our people. It is an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. And finally, we can no longer place the so-called global order above the vital interests of our people and our nations. We do not need to abandon the system of international cooperation we authored, and we don't need to dismantle the global institutions of the old order that together we built. But these must be reformed. These must be rebuilt. For example, the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world. But we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role. It could not solve the war in Gaza. Instead, it was American leadership that freed captives from barbarians and brought about a fragile truce. It has not solved the war in Ukraine. It took American leadership in partnership with many of the countries here today just to bring the two sides to the table in search of a still elusive peace. It was powerless to constrain the nuclear program of radical Shia clerics in Tehran. That required 14 bombs dropped with precision from American B-2 bombers. And it was unable to address the threat to our security from a narco-terrorist dictator in Venezuela. Instead, it took American special forces to bring this fugitive to justice. In a perfect world, all of these problems and more would be solved by diplomats and strongly worded resolutions. But we do not live in a perfect world. And we cannot continue to allow those who blatantly and openly threaten our citizens and endanger our global stability to shield themselves behind abstractions of international law which they themselves routinely violate. This is the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe to join us on. It is a path we have walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries, before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions, and by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then, as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now, together with you. And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. The alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. And the only fear we have is the fear of the shame of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children. An alliance ready to defend our people, to safeguard our interests, and to preserve the freedom of action that allows us to shape our own destiny. Not one that exists to operate a global welfare state and atone for the purported sins of past generations. An alliance that does not allow its power to be outsourced, constrained, or subordinated to systems beyond its control. One that does not depend on others for the critical necessities of its national life. And one that does not maintain the polite pretense that our way of life is just one among many, and that asks for permission before it acts. And above all, an alliance based on the recognition that we, the West, have inherited together. What we have inherited together is something that is unique and distinctive and irreplaceable, because this, after all, is the very foundation of the transatlantic bond. Acting together in this way, we will not just help recover a sane foreign policy, it will restore to us a clear sense of ourselves. It will restore a place in the world. And in so doing, it will rebuke and deter the forces of civilizational erasure that today menace both America and Europe alike. So in a time of headlines heralding the end of the transatlantic era, let it be known and clear to all that this is neither our goal nor our wish. Because for us Americans, our home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe. Our story began with an Italian explorer whose adventure into the great unknown to discover a new world brought Christianity to the Americas and became the legend that defined the imagination of our pioneer nation. Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster that gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong. Our great Midwestern heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer. Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. Our horses, our ranches, our rodeos, the entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West. These were born in Spain. And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it was named New York. And you know that in the year that my country was founded, Lorenzo and Catalina Giraldi lived in Casal Monferrato in the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. And Jose and Manuela Reina lived in Sevilla, Spain. I don't know what, if anything, they knew about the 13 colonies which had gained their independence from the British Empire. But here's what I'm certain of. They could have never imagined that 250 years later, one of their direct descendants would be back here today on this continent as the chief diplomat of that infant nation. And yet here I am, reminded by my own story that both our histories and our fates will always be linked. Together we rebuilt a shattered continent in the wake of 2 devastating world wars. When we found ourselves divided once again by the Iron Curtain, the Free West linked arms with the courageous dissidents struggling against tyranny in the East to defeat Soviet communism. We have fought against each other, then reconciled, then fought, then reconciled again. And we have bled and died side by side on battlefields from Kapyong to Kandahar. And I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity, and that once again, we want to do it together with you, our cherished allies and our oldest friends. We want to do it together with you, with a Europe that is proud of its heritage and of its history, with a Europe that has the spirit of creation and liberty that sent ships out into uncharted seas and birthed our civilization, with a Europe that has the means to defend itself and the will to survive. We should be proud of what we achieved together in the last century, but now we must confront and embrace the opportunities of a new one. Because yesterday is over. The future is inevitable. And our destiny together awaits. Thank you.
This is what mainstream, especially in Canada, we have as a nation, we have one of the most constrained and politically controlled media propaganda outlets in the Western civilization. The States knows this. So do other European nations that have been fighting against this global agenda. Do you fight for your country? Or do you fight for the corporations that say, yeah, we'll let you have a little food? Do you fight for your independent freedom? Or do you fight for a global world order that seeks to destroy every single part of what our ancestors fought to give us? This is where we are today. And now our propaganda, especially this last bombshell that came out, this open mic that busted one of the worst, if not the worst, propagandist, liberal socialist pusher, which we're going to take a peek at.
comes to be elected again, but there's also, the reality that some people in Alberta are kind of warming up to the Prime Minister because he has taken markedly different positions on issues that matter to them, whether it be energy development or climate change measures that he's backed off on. So maybe Mr. Genereux feels like his riding is starting to move in that direction as well.
Rosie, thank you. The CBC's Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton live in Ottawa. Minister of Industry Melanie Joly is speaking to reporters in Montreal. Let's listen.
Just because it's all made up anyway.
Let's go over what she said and think carefully about the truth as opposed to the lies that she is saying.
Comes to be elected again, but there's also, the reality that some people in Alberta are kind of warming up to the Prime Minister because he has taken
this area, since the day it became part of the Federation, has never, ever elected a Liberal government. Never. Let that sink in.
markedly different positions on issues that matter to them, whether it be energy development or...
What energy development? Enbridge, and I'm going to do this on another episode to show you, on the news down in the States pretty much said, no, we won't deal in Canada anymore. We've been burnt. Once bitten, twice shy. And it's the same party. Instead, we are investing here. We got burnt out of pipelines, billions of dollars. Nothing has changed there. And he subtly hints at how the government helped to use taxpayer dollars to build a pipeline that helped global interests, companies that are invested in this WEF, Davos, Green Cabal, Brookfield. I urge you, previous episodes, I expose this. I show you the pipelines. I show you how Canadian companies are fighting to try and use this pipeline, but can't. And how the prices have been raised, but other contracts have been signed with Brookfield companies that they can pump their oil through. They're ripping Canada apart. They are dismantling every piece of what it is to be Canadian, of the free market, and of Canadian companies in order to funnel that money to these green zealots, to Carneys' bank account.
Or climate change measures that he's backed off on. So,
what climate change measures has he backed up on? They didn't get rid of the carbon tax in order to rebuke their environmental or back up on it. They did it because they knew it was political suicide. But they still have a carbon credit system that hasn't changed and is set to increase. Eric Nuttall, which I showed a small clip of, and I'll be exposing more of the questions that he went through in another episode, says that it's not a MOU with Alberta, it's bribery. And the worst part is it doesn't change anything. So those Canadian companies will not be looking into building a pipeline because nothing has changed. It's the same Liberal Party. It's the same WEF, Davos, Brookfield, Carneys that are running our country. Nothing has changed.
maybe Mr. Genereux feels like his riding is starting to move in that direction as well.
Really?
Rosie, thank you. The CBC's Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton live in Ottawa. Minister of Industry Melanie Joly is speaking to reporters in Montreal. Let's listen.
That she exposes.
Just because it's all made up anyway.
It's all made up. For the younger people who are watching, any of the older generation caught on decades ago to the lies of what is the CBC. State-funded media is propaganda. We saw this with Pierre Trudeau, the first worst prime minister. And we actually relived what happened through his term, through his son, right down to the Emergencies Act, the alignment with China and communism. Look at the NDP. They're trying to get the government to go against the United States and ship oil to Cuba. In the meantime, Cubans are so scared of their government. Half the population has fled that country. There are hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of huge holes where bodies are buried of Cubans that fought against socialism. Our media doesn't talk about that. No. They're brainwashing you. They repeat the same thing over and over and over until you think it's true, you begin to believe it, and they can actually change your moral integrity. Here is an amazing clip. Absolutely amazing clip. You have to see.
But he has decided to bring in a flag at a time when Canadian unity has never been more divided than it is now.
Listen carefully and think about everything that the Liberal Party has done in the last 10.5 years and the promises and falsities that have come from it. The blatant lies. Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it.
In every part of Canada, what he has succeeded in doing in 13 months has been to put race against race and province against province. This man who parades in the garb of Canadian unity, some months ago, the CBC decided that they were going to take a series of pictures of me in the form of a kind of a film of my life. They didn't give me any preview of it. I got what they decided was good for me, and I have no complaint about that. After all, didn't Cromwell say to the artist who drew his picture, who painted him, put in all the warts as well? But when Mr. Pearson had his picture taken, $35,000 worth.
$35,000. This was 1964. 1964. Think of how much money that is. And think about what he just said. It's the same thing that they are doing to the Conservative Party today. They are purposely trying to create lies about this political party, especially its leader, because he wants to cut off funding to state-funded media. They have no choice but to go on these bought and paid for state media. They have to hold their tongue because it can be manipulated or twisted and pushed against them, which 99% of the time it is, because all of these propaganda outlets are owned by the Liberals. They fear Poilievre. Poilievre has his flaws. There's a lot of things about him I dislike. But there's a lot of things about him that we need. And they know he's going to be the one to stop the insanity of what is going on in Canada right now. It would crush this new Liberal Party of the last 10 years and all of the things they have done that has caused us to become an enemy of the United States, an enemy of ourselves and our own heritage.
They had a preview. That's the voice that he used when it was described. Now you can just imagine them. There they met together. Erskine, you and I'd be in a terrible position if we had to see pictures of ourselves. Mind you, there was no interference with the CBC. Not at all. They met in Mr. Pearson's office. The Minister of Trade and Commerce and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs. We have had a flag. Flags can be changed. But flags cannot be imposed, the sacred symbols of a people's hopes and aspirations, by the simple, capricious, personal choice of a Prime Minister of Canada. And let me underline that fact. Now then, whenever the majority of Canadian people want a new version, and when the design is meaningful and acceptable to most Canadians, that's democracy. But now let's understand what the present government is trying to do. You know, it's surprising how often this government finds an inspiration from the Creditistes. I just looking over Hansard this evening, and I find that I asked him this question as to whether or not, under the circumstances, he would permit or he would arrange for a national referendum. And his answer was no. He has acted in this matter, in an arbitrary manner. He said he was going to give Parliament the right to a free vote. And then he explained what he meant by a free vote, that you're going to be allowed to vote. But if you vote against him, you'll have an election.
Sound familiar? This is what is going on right now. The worst part about it is the anti-democratic approach in which he's doing it. He doesn't care about you. Carney is in the fight for his life right now. Not politically. He's got that secured because he owns the propaganda. It's his investments. It's all of the backdoor deals, the lies, the deceit, using propaganda to convince Canadians to go against every single thing of what it is to be Canadian, European, American, to profit him and his buddies and their investors. And that money goes where? It's split between them and China. Previous episodes, look into the GFANs. I was one of the very first people to bring that up. And if you look at my sister channel, I actually show you where the States was held the entire court proceeding. Our media? Crickets. Crickets. And then you have the reality of what's happening around the world that, again, should have happened here. But nobody's talking about it. And especially on today. This should be front and center.
Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has been sentenced to life in prison for his brief imposition of martial law in December 2024, during one of the country's biggest political crises in decades.
Canada had ours. It was called the Freedom Convoy. You know why this isn't happening to Trudeau and why this isn't happening to Freeland and all the rest of them, including Carney, who wrote the op-ed and who was pushing Trudeau to use even more extreme force, let alone our new trade minister, ambassador to the United States, trade minister to the United States, who openly lied during the commission, the kangaroo court. Canadians won't see justice because of the propaganda. The lies. Canadians need to wake up. I declare martial law to swiftly eliminate this shameless pro-North forces and to protect the system of liberal democracy.
Yoon defended his martial law decree as necessary to stop liberals, whom he described as anti-state forces, from obstructing his agenda with their legislative majority.
Sounds familiar? Now the kicker is the words that they use. And remember, I studied this stuff. This is what they do. They try to make it seem as though what they're saying is for the righteous of the people, is for the best of the people, is for the... Just like what happened to that leader who's going to do life in prison for bringing in their own version of the Emergencies Act. The difference is they had enough media attention and they had enough people who were seeing what was going on because their country isn't the size of ours that went, this isn't going to fly, and then they charged the guy, which in Canada, it should have happened. Listen to the words. This is the words. This is just the kind of talk that you would hear from Hitler and all of the rest of these types of people. Sickening. Yes, we will get out of this pandemic by pokey pokes. We all know people who are a little bit hesitant. We will continue to try to convince them, right, by not allowing them to go out, by not allowing them to take planes, trains, or automobiles, by not allowing them to have their job, by not allowing them to go for groceries, by not allowing them to go to restaurants. This wasn't them trying to work with people who didn't want to take it. This was them using every political power possible to enslave a people and force them to go against what they believed. And by the way, the science came out. The fringe minority was right. Sorry to say it again. If you're one of these, hey, I've got my ninth boot, that's your fault. And to be honest, it's propaganda's fault because you didn't know. You were forced. You had it forced down your throat, and you thought this was the way to go. This was going to save humanity. Wrong. But listen to this. Listen to this verbal diarrhea. This dictator type of talk. It's the same type of talk that the liberals still use today. But there are also those people who are fiercely against it. They are extremists who don't believe in science. Often they're misogynists, also often racists. It's a small group that muscles in. And we have to make a choice in terms of leaders, in terms of the country. Do we tolerate these people? Or do we say, hey, most of the Quebecois people are pokey-poked? And why was 80%? Because by then they had already had how many months, almost a year, of not having any choice. They had no choice. Canada needs to wake up. So now, listen to the rebuttal. Listen to, and of course, he didn't say this in English. Just like the turd, they try to do this and they won't say it in English. He was questioned about Rubio and his speech in Munich.
Paul Wells, independent journalist. I'll be asking my question in French because this is a Quebec topic. I'd like to hear you on another speech that you delivered 2 days after the Davos speech, and 2 days later you mentioned Canadian history in a speech which was hardly criticized by many observers, and they said that was a big mistake and a blunder, that was the wrong reading of history. Okay. Yes. Yeah, okay. I've read your column, Mr. Paul Wells. So it costs me $50 a year in order to be able what you write. Nevertheless, whatever. The polls remain in favor of the Liberals since this speech. So, was that a mistake from pollster, or did you evade it, got it scot-free from that difficulty? Well, I know. One has to take into account comments coming from people like you, of course. Well, there is a difference between the Davos situation and the comments I made in Davos and the comments I made in Quebec and Mr. Marco Rubio's speech a week ago in Munich. Mr. Rubio, on behalf of the American administration, speak of a kind of Christian nationalism, and they're perfectly whereas our nationalism, our Canadian nationalism, is a civic nationalism, and we have full respect for the various cultures in Canada and the various rights attached to everybody, and the same rights throughout the country, in our beautiful country. So this is basic, fundamental. So of course there are changes taking place throughout the world, and the world is more dangerous, more divided, and there is some kind of rivalry taking place between Canadian nationalism and other forms of nationalism. So it is important to protect our country as far as national defense is concerned, and it is even just as important to protect our own political system, our rights, and the respect for everybody living in Canada.
They actually had people in the audience, and I'm trying to find video, but I had a couple people who had reached out to me and said that they actually had people in the audience that were purposely trying to show them when to clap. Everybody back there, you got to remember, this is all a corporation who's going to receive billions of your tax dollars that are tied to Brookfield. They don't care about you. This is the most, let's call it corrupt government ever. He has broken every ethics rule that there could possibly be, and will suffer no reprisal. There will be no justice on him because the media refuses to point it out. And you have got great podcasters out there, other outlets who have put together, and I shout out to Moose and the Loose. He's got a few little things on there and errors, and I noticed that he has corrected them over time, which is great to see. He's mapped it all out. I've got mine all mapped out. I'm not a computer nerd, so I haven't actually made the website, but I've got all the information. We've been breaking these stories. The media has been silent on it. Crickets. You have to watch this clip in its entirety. I'm just going to play the last few minutes of it. And this is what Rubio was getting at.
Food to Murmansk and Arkhangelsk. The 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, during the landing in Normandy on June 6, 1944, successfully captured Juno Beach and advanced deep into France. In the same year, Canadian troops distinguished themselves in the Italian campaign, breaking through the powerful Hitler line, and by 1945 played a key role in the liberation of the Netherlands. If there are any decent people left in the leadership of Canada, I am asking, just in case, let it be a rhetorical question, it is their duty to declassify this list of the Jules Deschênes Commission. This is not being done, as they say, for Russian propaganda. This is being done for historical memory, for the hygiene of conscience, so that even if it is moss-covered, it might still have the opportunity in Canada to raise its voice. This is so that Canadians know not only about the feats of their ancestors on the battlefields of the Second World War, but also about those whom the authorities of their country sheltered after this war. Why must this be done? Because it kills the memory of those Canadians who fought on the right side of history, fought against Nazism and fascism, and finished off the Third Reich. As long as this list remains under lock and key, the shadow of complicity falls not on the dead criminals, but on the currently living politicians who are covering for them. They are in Canada, they are in power, like that very Chrystia Freeland, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, and then the Deputy Prime Minister, the granddaughter of a hamster.
There you go. These are the people in power. This is what Rubio was getting at. to be proud of our history. Instead, they're using all of these little things as triggers and paid protesters, which, check this out.
Good morning, Alberta Patriots. It's your guy Igor here. I want to cover some breaking news for you. Canada is officially becoming a communist country. And I want to bring you some evidence today. You are not going to believe it. Canada is becoming so corrupt that now you can actually hire protesters.
I've got major breaking news. Paid protesters is a real thing in Canada. And get this, I just spoke to a recruiter. Check this out.
Hey, just curious. I just saw your ad and I'm just wondering, how does this work? Okay, so how it works is we'll message you and tell you what time to be there. And we'll get your info and your for e-transfer and stuff like that. And you just meet us on location. Okay, do you guys provide travel? Can somebody come and pick me up, or do I have to meet you guys at a location? How does that work? Yeah, we'll message you a location and you just meet us there. Okay, and then basically what do you need from me? My email address to send me an e-transfer? Yeah, exactly, yeah. And just roughly, what does it cost? How much you guys, how much are you willing to give me? We do $50 for the day. It's about 3 to 4 hours, roughly, give or take. Okay, and then are you guys in my mind? I keep on thinking that you guys are a protest group, right? You guys basically you guys hire protesters, but what do you guys really do? Do you guys stage events? For example, somebody's opening up a restaurant and you need a lineup of people showing up outside, or is this actually we go there to protest against a certain cause? Yeah, exactly. Basically, we just need the extra bodies there for a protest type scenario. Okay, is it kind of just in my mind? I'm still thinking do you want me to dye my hair purple or blue or anything, and just wear a nose ring? I don't understand. I don't get any of this. No, you just basically just come how you are, regular street clothes. Okay. Jacket. Okay. And what are we what do you guys need us for this week? Are we protesting something, or do you guys have signs made for us? What's? Yeah, we provide all the signs for you, so you just come and show up, basically. Okay, sounds simple enough. Thank you.
I've got major breaking news.
Wow, so all you have to do is show up. This is exactly how the entire situation has started in Ukraine, where I'm from. It's the protests in 2014, the Orange Revolution. Before that we had all of these things. People were actually getting paid by the government to oppose the people's democracy. And this, I don't know, who are the people hiring to protest? Who is that? Is it a domestic interference, interprovincial interference? What is that? It's called faking the democratic views. It's called faking the democracy. Just to go and make a fake protest. It's insane. It's $50 is the cost of your freedom. It's $50 for some hours, and people are going to show up. Who cares what the cost is? Because you know why? Because our economy has been ruined. Our economy has been suffering so much that people are broke. People cannot afford. I cannot believe it. What's going on with Canada? And we are literally declaring economical warfare against the United States by going with China and things like that. And,
Well, there you go. I'm also going to attach probably the best documentary ever made on Ukraine, so that you can actually be educated on the truth of what's going on with the Russia-Ukraine war. And I urge you, please, like, share, and subscribe so that more people out there can actually see the truth. And as always, I post all of my links in the description below. I don't hide anything. I don't get paid by the government. I never would accept it even if they offered. I don't get paid by any parties. I did this channel to get past the propaganda and expose everybody. Everybody. We'll never have an honest politician if we have bought and paid for media. That's just the truth of it. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the episode. You've been watching Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm Alias Tagai. Stay informed.